The Blood of Sand Creek, a saga of vengeance and valor. November 29, 1864. The wind howled across the frozen plains of Sand Creek, Colorado, cutting through the pre-dawn stillness like a blade. Chief Black Kettle stood tall outside his teepee, his weathered hands gripping two poles, one bearing the stars and stripes of the United States, the other a tattered white flag of truce. His breath clouded in the icy air as he stared toward the horizon, trusting in the promises from Montana to Oklahoma, words spoken at Camp Weld 2 months prior, assurances of safety for his Cheyenne and Arapaho people. Around him, the camp stirred softly. Women stoked fires, children huddled under buffalo hides, and elders murmured prayers to the spirits. They were 550 souls, seeking refuge near Fort Lyon, believing the nightmare of war might finally pause. Then came the thunder, not from the sky, but from the earth, a low, guttural roar of hooves and steel. Colonel John Chivington, a Methodist preacher turned militia commander, led 700 men of the 3rd Colorado Cavalry out of the darkness. Their eyes gleamed with a zealot's fire, their sabers drawn, their 4 howitzers primed to spit death. Black Kettle raised his flags higher, shouting for peace, his voice swallowed by the chaos as the first cannonball tore through the camp. The blast shredded teepees, hurling bodies into the snow. Rifles barked, and screams pierced the air as Chivington's men descended, drunk on whiskey and bloodlust, ignoring the symbols of surrender. In minutes, the camp became a slaughterhouse. Warriors scrambled for weapons, but most were cut down before they could fight. Women fled, with children in their arms, only to fall under a hail of bullets. Elders raised trembling hands, pleading, and were shot where they stood. The snow ran red, pooling around the mangled remains of 150 Cheyenne and Arapaho, 2/3 of them women, children, and the old. Black Kettle staggered through the carnage, his wife bleeding from 9 wounds, yet clinging to life as he pulled survivors toward the creek's far bank. Above the din, a war cry rose from the north. The Dog Soldiers, the Cheyenne's fiercest warriors, had been watching from afar. They'd refused Black Kettle's plea for peace, and now they rode hard, their ponies kicking up frost, their hearts ablaze with a vow. Revenge. From the forests to the plains, the Cheyenne's forge. Centuries before Sand Creek, the Cheyenne were not the horseback legends of the Wild West. In the late 1600s, they thrived in the Great Lakes region, near what's now Minnesota, their villages dotting the banks of the Missouri and Red Rivers, part of the Algonquian-speaking tribes. They lived in earthen lodges, sturdy homes of logs and soil, raising corn and beans in fertile valleys. They hunted deer and crafted clay pots, their lives tied to the rhythm of seasons and the bounty of the land. Allies like the Arapaho were kin, while the Lakota Sioux lingered as distant cousins, their bonds forged through trade and shared struggles. But peace unraveled. Around 1680, rival tribes, perhaps the Ojibwe or Sioux, pressed in, their numbers bolstered by French traders' guns. The Cheyenne fought to hold their ground, but the cost was steep. Villages burned, harvests dwindled, and the dead piled high. By 1690, they began a slow exodus west, a migration spanning generations. They traded forests for prairies, rivers for endless grass, their world reshaping with every step. By the early 1800s, they roamed the Great Plains, from Montana to Oklahoma, chasing buffalo, on horseback, their old farming days, a fading memory. The 1830s brought a crucible, the United States, now a hungry young nation, pushed west. Gold in the Rockies and fertile land drew settlers by the thousands, their wagon trains slicing through native territory. The Cheyenne, once scattered bands, united into a single tribe. Under this pressure, forts sprang up, Laramie, Bridger, Kearney, bristling with soldiers. The buffalo herds, their lifeblood, began to thin as hunters and railroads carved the plains apart. From this chaos rose the Dog Soldiers, a brotherhood of warriors who'd turned survival into defiance. The Dog Soldiers, heart of the storm. By 1830, the Dog Soldiers were no mere warband. They were the Cheyenne's steel spine, born from the Massacre band, where every man pledged his life to the society. They swelled to half the tribe's warriors, hundreds strong. Their rituals pulsed with power, war songs echoing across campfires, dances under starlit skies, regalia adorned with feathers and bones from Cheyenne legends. They weren't just fighters, they were the tribe's enforcers, policing camps with an iron hand. During buffalo hunts, they rode at the forefront, ensuring no one broke ranks until every family had its share, a lifeline of meat and hides. In a world closing in, their influence grew through the 1840s and 1850s. In 1840, they brokered peace with the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache. After a bitter feud, a pact that held like stone. But when the Pikes Peak Gold Rush hit in 1858, flooding Colorado with fortune seekers, the Dog Soldiers drew a line. Treaties came. Bent's Fort in 1860 demanded reservations, and they spat on them. To cage themselves was to die, they said, and instead they struck. Platte River wagon trains burned. Mining camps vanished in smoke. Stagecoaches fell silent. The Civil War's chaos gave them room to breathe, with Union and Confederate armies too busy killing each other to guard the frontier. Then came Sand Creek. The massacre wasn't just a wound, it was a call to war. Survivors staggered north to the Dog Soldiers' camp on the Smoky Hill River, their tales of butchery fanning the flames. Black Kettle, still preaching peace, lost sway. The warrior's path was set. In January 1865, they unleashed hell. 3,000 Cheyenne, Sioux, and Arapaho, many Sand Creek survivors, among them, stormed Julesburg and Camp Rankin. 14 soldiers and 4 civilians fell, their blood soaking the snow, while the warriors took no losses worth counting. They swept the South Platte Valley, torching ranches, seizing cattle, and leaving settlers trembling. Scalps from Sand Creek, found in a traveler's bag, became their banner. The warpath widens. Spring 1865 saw no relent. In Wyoming's Powder River country, they ambushed Colonel Smith near Fort Benton, his 11 men crumpling under a hail of arrows and bullets. Stagecoaches rolled into traps, outposts burned, and the U.S. Army scrambled to respond. On July 26, the Platte Bridge Battle erupted at Camp Dodge. 150 soldiers faced a tidal wave of Cheyenne, Sioux, and Arapaho, led by the towering war chief, Roman Nose. His strategy was ruthless. Feints drew the troops out, then a crushing charge. broke their lines. 29 soldiers died. 10 more crawled away wounded. The natives lost 8. The dog soldiers' discipline held firm, a wall of fury. Amidst the storm, the years built to a crescendo. By June 25, 1876, the dog soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder with Sioux and Arapaho at the Little Bighorn. George Custer's 7th Cavalry, 268 men, rode into a trap. Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Chief Gall, 2 Moons, and the dog soldiers' own leaders orchestrated a symphony of war. Arrows darkened the sky, rifles roared, and Custer's golden hair fell with his men, every last one cut down. Sand Creek's ghosts danced in the victory, a decade of rage, unleashed in a single shattering blow. The last stand. Triumph faded fast. The Medicine Lodge Treaty of 1867 caged most Cheyenne on reservations, but the dog soldiers refused, dodging General Hancock's 1,400 troops as he burned villages. In vain. In 1868, Roman Nose fell at Beecher Island, a bullet stealing his breath mid-charge. By 1874, the Second Adobe Walls fight saw them outgunned, policing camps. Then, in 1876, General Mackenzie razed Dull Knife's village, forcing surrender. The survivors were marched to Oklahoma, where heat and sickness gnawed at them. In 1878, Tanglehair and Little Wolf led a daring escape, hundreds fleeing north. They fought through Kansas, killing settlers and soldiers, splitting into 2 bands. Dull Knife's group was cornered at Fort Robinson. On January 9, 1879, a starving breakout ended in a massacre. 64 dead, Tanglehair among them. Little Wolf's band hid in Nebraska's sand hills, reaching Montana to carve out a fragile home. By 1884, the Northern Cheyenne Reservation stood as their final bastion. Legacy in the dust. The Dog Soldiers' War cost the U.S. dearly, $1 million, and countless lives. In the 1870s alone, they didn't win the West, but they made it bleed. From Minnesota farmers to Plains warriors, they defied an empire, turning Sand Creek's horror into a cry that echoed at Little Bighorn and beyond. Their name endures, a testament to resistance, a scar on history's page, and a whisper of what it means to fight when the world turns against you.